Thank you for joining us for We've Got Issues. I'm Nancy Furness, and I'm here with Brad Nickason. And We've Got Issues is a nonpartisan, citizens-based forum where we look at issues of interest to the Tri-Cities and beyond. And today we are located on the traditional and ancestral and unceded territories of Coquitlam, Katzie, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Today joining us is MLA Fin Donnelly, who is the MLA for Coquitlam-Burke Mountain and also the Parliamentary Secretary for Fisheries and Aquaculture. Finn is also a former marathon swimmer and was recently honored for his work in protecting the Fraser River and working to raise awareness around the importance of the Fraser River. He was recently inducted into the Fraser River Discovery Center's Hall of Fame. So thank you so much for joining us today, Finn.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Brad. Great to be here.
So thanks for joining us today, Finn. And you've completed a number of long-distance swims, including two 1,400-kilometer swims down the Fraser River in 1995 and again in 2000. And I was wondering if you could just start by telling us or sharing with us what inspired you to take on these epic swims.
Yeah, right on. Thank you, Nancy. Well, it was really when I got out of university, I finished learning about all the environmental impacts to our area and the planet, really. And I started to, so essentially I learned about those issues. And then I was also just wrapping up my career as a swimmer. I was 16 years a competitive swimmer, swam at the national level for Canada. And so I combined the two. And one of the things that was always in my mind was the English Channel. My mom's from England, so I grew up knowing about the English Channel as a crossing. And then I heard about Georgia Strait looking for people to come and mostly boat across, using human-powered ways to get across. And I had a friend who said, well, you swim, why don't you swim across? And that really started my career of swimming, essentially. I mean, I did a decade of swims, as you mentioned in your introduction, 14 environmental marathon swims covering over 3,200 kilometers in BC's rivers, lakes, and ocean, including those two amazing Fraser River swims, which were incredibly hard, but shaped my life and who I am and what I do as a person. But it was really that initial awareness that we are on a collision course on the planet with the way we are living. And I put it down in simple terms that we are living unsustainably. And that way of life can't be sustained with the type of activities that we do every day. So that needs to change. And so I thought by drawing attention to the bodies of water that are incredibly important to British Columbians and people in this area, that could draw attention to try and make change, at least to those bodies of water.
Now, the Fraser River is a very special river and unique river. Can you maybe share with us a little bit of your journey down the river, what you might see along the way, right from the headwaters near the Alberta border right down to the mouth of the river?
Yeah, definitely. The Fraser is as you say, it's a very special, unique, amazing river system. It is the largest, it contains the largest watershed, intact watershed in British Columbia. So the headwaters of the Fraser start on the BC-Alberta border. And one little fact, that if you stretch the entire river out, it's the length of British Columbia from north to south. So that's how long that river is. But it starts high in the Rocky Mountains, and you have the Rocky Mountains that really form the headwaters, and you go through the Rocky Mountain Trench, which is actually quite shallow and flat, but very windy. However, coming out of Moose Lake and out of Mount Robson, it loses a lot of elevation quickly, but then it settles down around Tejon and Dunster, and it becomes the Rocky Mountain Trench. And then at Prince George, after about 580 kilometers, the river turns south, and that's really where the first major tributary comes in the Nechako. and then that water pushes down south. And it starts as when you get to Quesnel, it starts to really move into the upper Fraser Canyon. And you see the terrain change quickly. You go through 6 major regions of the Fraser, 34 major river sheds, river tributaries of the Fraser drain into the Fraser like the Nechako. And there's 10 out of BC's 14 biogeoclimatic zones that are represented in the Fraser. So amazing change as you travel down through the Fraser Canyon, where now you've left the tall, older trees, ancient cedars that are some as old as 2,000 years old, getting into the grasslands and the arid desert of the Chilcotin. Traveling through the Chilcotin and the fast waters of the Fraser Canyon, the river narrows, deepens, goes very quickly. You continue down to Lillooet, where you go through Lillooet and down to Lytton, where the Thompson comes in, the clear, crisp water of the Thompson with the world famous Adams River run that is supported in the Thompson system. Then it goes into the lower Fraser Canyon, which I think a lot of people from Vancouver are actually somewhat familiar of the Fraser if they've ever been on Hell's Gate, the air tram or the tram that goes across the river. But tremendous history, First Nation history, European settlement history, Chinese history, all along the banks of the river. It's incredible the hundreds of years and thousands of years of history that is supported by that river system. And now we get to Hope, which is, the river really starts to change from the fast flowing canyon and the turbulent rapids and boils and the narrow constricting river to opening up onto the floodplain of the Fraser Valley and the amazing fertile soil that has been transported down that river over thousands of years. So you come out onto the estuary or the floodplain of the Fraser Valley, and then obviously I start to see, as a swimmer, I started to see settlement and lots of houses going along the floodplain of Hope, and from Hope down through places like Mission, you're past Chilliwack Mission, coming into Coquitlam, and then you really start to see the urban impacts along the river. The towers coming up, the bridges, trucks, planes driving alongside or over, planes flying over. Obviously you see tugs, and it's really where it gets known as the working river is really down in the lower estuary and that in this section when you get closer to Vancouver, Richmond, or Musqueam territory. So that you see the differing landscapes and the different communities and all the different plant and animal life when you travel the length of the Fraser, that almost 1,400 kilometers. It's really an amazing heritage river full of ecosystem values, full of economic values, and full of history and heritage.
Why again did you do this swim, this long, harrowing, what sounds like sometimes dangerous swim? Why did you do that?
Yeah, great question, Brad. It was I did that swim to draw attention to one of the world's greatest salmon rivers on the planet. As it started, I had already done a number of swims across Georgia Strait, Juan de Fuca Strait, the Pitt Lake, Williams Lake, the Roush River, and I was feeling a little bit burnt out, to be honest. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do a swim from my hometown of Coquitlam to the mouth. That's how it started. And then I started to talk to groups and organizations to say, well, I'd really like you to get involved and help support this effort. And there's interest generated from just inquiring about help. And then they Yeah, help organize the community, because I mean, the swim was one aspect, but it was also interacting with the communities. So on the first swim, it was, I think, 20 different communities at the different stops over the 3 weeks that the swim took. And it was really asking organizations to get involved to host a community celebration at their stop. And one organization said, well, you know, we'll get involved, but you need to start at the beginning of the river. And I was, at that time, I was asking, well, where's the beginning of the river? And so I discovered, you know, up in Mount Robson, and I thought, wow, that is a long swim. So I thought about it for quite a while, and, you know, went from being burnt out and tired to really excited about this. And you're right, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. It was an incredibly hard swim, and mostly because of how cold it was, especially at the start for the first 500 kilometers. That was the challenge. But it was still, for me, a way to combine my skill of swimming and my passion for the, you know, that we're living unsustainably. And this was my effort to try and draw attention to something I cared very much about, and knew that this was an important river, not just to Coquitlam, but to all of British Columbians. And so wanted to engage in getting their help in getting us on a sustainable path, working together and towards solutions.
So it sounds like you developed a relationship with the river, but you are also developing relationships with the people that live along and work along the Fraser River. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience were there, like what you learned about the people that are living along the Fraser, how they interact with the river, and what their feelings are? Did they feel that it needed to be protected, and were they supportive of your efforts?
Definitely, it was that was a big part of the swim, was getting to know the people in the different areas along the river. I mean, I mentioned the diversity of the different ecosystems. It's the same with the communities along the river, and why people were attracted to that place. And very much they care about their place, and they have different views and different ways of expressing how they want to care for or steward the land and the watersheds that they're in. And I met some amazing people doing some incredible things, and that's the beauty, I think, of this river. So yeah, not everybody, you know, understood what the impacts were. Some were just curious, why is this guy swimming in the river? So they were wanting to learn, and I think that's great. You know, if we need to learn about our predicaments and how we can become part of the solution and what we can do. And, you know, so, you know, for instance, I always remember, and I, you know, dedicated this the swim to, or the induction into the Hall of Fame to a fellow named Curtis Culp, who lived up in Dunster. And this was a tiny community is a tiny community of about 200 to 300 people. And it was after my first day of swimming 8.5 hours, I was incredibly cold, hypothermic, exhausted, and I'm thinking, this is day one of 20 days. How am I going to keep going? And I met Curtis and Bonnie Culp in their farmhouse at the end of the day, and they welcomed me into their home. They hosted the community. There was a barbecue there to show the support for what I'm doing, because they got it, they knew. And just them welcoming me into their home, they put me in their bathtub, warmed me up, and so the next day I was able to slither back into that cold, slimy wetsuit and then slide back into the Fraser for another 8-hour day. But it's people like Curtis, who unfortunately died last year and is no longer with us. And that's why I dedicated the induction into the Hall of Fame to people like Curtis, who have just put a lifetime of work into their place along the river. It's just amazing. So I feel working on the shoulders of those, you know, pioneers, or those people who have looked after, stewarded their part of the Fraser for years and decades. And so I so appreciate that work. And you can find those people in every community as you go from headwaters right down to the mouth of the river.
Yeah, I know you developed relationships on your first swims down the river, but you've been back acting as a mentor to young people and on the sustainable living trips. And I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit about those trips?
Yeah, absolutely. So after the second swim down the Fraser in 2000, I was swimming along with another person, a fellow that was paddling. So he kayaked the length of the river with me, Sharman Leary. And Sharman and I were talking, and I was pretty close to the end. I think it was around Mission, and I thought, okay, I'm pretty confident I can make this. And I was talking with Sharman and saying, you know, we need to develop a program that can go take other people and have the experience that we just had, this amazing experience of going headwaters to sea and experiencing the diversity, meeting all the different people, the communities that we have just met. And so after that swim, we put our heads together and we came up with a curriculum. We developed, we started putting, fundraising together. We started putting the word out about, if you'd like to come and do this leadership program, sign up. And by 2002, we had enough money and enough people in place, and we took our first cohort the length of the river. And that program has been running since COVID now, has unfortunately stopped at 2 summers. But for 17 years, it has run and brought over 110 graduates of the program that are doing, I think, amazing work, whether it's in the Fraser or in the province or wherever they end up. They're doing some great work, and this trip and this program, I think, has impacted their lives. So mentorship is incredibly important because we're only here for a while, and then we need to pass on that knowledge and inspiration to others to look after this incredible place that we call home.
If people are interested in getting involved in that, how would they do that?
Go to rivershed.com. That's the organization that I founded after my first swim in 1995. I founded it. It's now a charitable organization in 1996. We've been going now to almost 26 years. And if you go to rivershed.com, you can find out more about the program and the work that the society is involved with.
Can you tell us how long that trip takes down on the Rivershed trips, and also some examples of the types of things that you might do along the river as you're traveling?
Sure. It started as a 3-week program, and then we kept adding days, and so it's almost a full month. And the kinds of things you will canoe in a large 34-foot canoe. So having a full team of paddlers canoeing in the river is just in and of itself amazing. Through the canyon, you need to go to a different platform, so it's rafting, and then down again in the Lower Fraser, you can canoe. There's field trips, there's hikes, hiking through the Goat Rivershed. For 3 days and getting to know that river system as a tributary of the Fraser and the Upper Fraser. There's leadership programs. You meet and hear talks from experts along the way in different communities on different subjects, all to do with sustainability and watershed CPR, so connect, protect, and restore. So looking at how to protect the river, to restore the areas that are damaged, and look at different ways that each community and each region of the Fraser can be involved in trying to protect and restore this magnificent river system.
I personally know of at least a couple of people who have been on that trip and who have said that it was life-changing for them. So I think beyond learning about the environment and the communities and the people that live along the Fraser, as well as having to work together to get yourself down, all the way down in one piece. So there's a lot of beautiful sights to see along the way, but the Fraser is also a river that's facing a lot of challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those challenges, what the risks are to the Fraser?
Absolutely, and that is a big part of the program, is learning about those impacts, and on a positive side, how do we react, and how can we as individuals, we as groups, organizations, or we as communities make a difference or react to those threats. Those threats are real and they're intensifying. So climate change is probably the biggest threat to humanity that faces all watersheds, including the Fraser. And it is overwhelming and I think people are starting to really realize now, but I mean 2 decades ago when we started, we were talking about climate change, but I think the things have really intensified over the last 20 years. But that is a big overarching challenge. Then there's habitat loss and habitat threats from a myriad of issues, whether it's forestry or logging or mining or agriculture, ranching, urban development, lots of building houses, road building, bridges. Everything that we do for human settlement, human habitat has an impact within watersheds. And then there's the pollution that we pour into the river in our different communities. All goes in to the Fraser in different forms of treatment. So I remember when I first did my Fraser River swim in 1995, there was raw sewage going into the Fraser. Thankfully in the 90s, that because of a federal program, that changed. So it took years and investment from municipalities, but it finally upgraded to not having any raw sewage going in there, but that took a lot of time. So there's habitat loss, pollution, and climate change are the real big ones, and then there's the consumption of those resources that we use in our daily lives. Those are really the main drivers of living or not living sustainably.
You know, it sounds like there's challenges that have been changing over time, so we've cleaned up some of those issues. For things like climate change, are you actually seeing observable changes on the river now?
Yes, unfortunately, the changes that are the most obvious are how it's worsening. So just as an example, to set the context, pre-contact or in historical times, the Fraser system would take up to upwards of 50 million sockeye salmon a year. 50 million would come back to that system in all the different river tributaries, mostly, they're all lake systems. And that number, just to give you an idea, in 2019 was less than 500,000. And in last year, in 2020, it was less than 300,000 that returned. So from 50 million over the years, now those you could just say are bad years, but those are alarmingly bad years. And so that is, there's got to be, there are a number of issues at play. I mean, that's cumulative impacts over years, but climate change is a really big driving threat, whether it's in the ocean or in the river itself. So climate change is a big one, and we're seeing those really evident in those salmon returns.
We've seen other jurisdictions, we've seen some successes when we choose to actually address it. Is that correct?
It's totally correct, and it's amazing the resilience of nature if you just give it a chance. So if we learn from our ways and we decide, we commit to making a change, and then we actually implement those changes or solutions, it's amazing how quickly the nature can bounce back. Now, I'm not a biologist or an ecologist or someone that has that kind of knowledge, but I've learned enough to and talked to enough biologists and ecologists who have told me that I think it's enough to be hopeful for. It's what gives me hope in doing the work that I'm doing, because it does seem overwhelming. I mean, young people growing up today, with these sort of overwhelming challenges, it must be hard to even think about how do we turn this around. I mean, the deck is so stacked against us. And I still would say that there is a chance to turn things around. And in fact, I think because the salmon returns have been so low, it's galvanizing support right now. From my position, that I see is from federal down to local, everyone is recognizing this is a problem. We need to all work together. And that was actually the reason that I did the first swim in '95 is we're all part of the problem, but we can all be part of the solution. And once we recognize that we can be part of the solution, then it's a matter of getting those, implementing those changes and those actions. And really we start to build on a positive movement towards that, recovery. Are we there yet? I'm not sure, but I am hopeful that we will be able to do that. I certainly am doing that in my job as an MLA.
So how can the people like myself and Nancy and people in general support you in this in that movement?
Well, I think, and I've been talking about this my whole active life of doing these swims, is really it starts with an understanding yourself, and that's really critical. I mean, doing all the homework that you can, and then deciding yourself based on the evidence that you see, and talking to people, and so that's number one. Is really important that you, as a person, understand your relationship to your place and to the environment and that you depend on, and that we realize, and you realize, that you have an impact, and that you can be part of the solution, and you can make a difference in your own unique way. Everyone can contribute in their own unique way. So figuring out where can you make a difference after you've decided, okay, now I'm aware, now I understand, now I want to make a difference. And that's then the ways of contributing are endless.
You've contributed in a number of ways and been recognized for your leadership and your mentorship. So you became self-aware, and then you shared that knowledge and that passion for the river and the salmon with other people. So why did you choose to go into politics?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's a great summary, Nancy. I became self-aware. I think university really helped me understand the issues in the big context. And then I got organized and involved. I started volunteering for groups, and then I formed my own group. And then we were working on all of these issues, and all of these issues led to public policy. They all led to public policy, whether it was at the local level, the provincial level, or the federal level. They all led to public policy. Public policy, or what the government allowed to operate at the local level, provincial level, or federal level, was impacting the river. And so that it just was, I guess, a matter of time before I eventually got into politics, which I resisted for 7 years, because in 1995, when I finished the swim, I was fairly young, I got asked to run for council, for Coquitlam City Council. And I thought about it and said, no, I want to start this nonprofit organization. So the timing wasn't right for me to enter politics. And then every 3 years at the time after that, I got asked again to get involved. And I said no, and I wanted to re-swim the Fraser in 2000. So in 1999, I said no. But in 2002, I talked to my wife and then said, okay, I'm going to run for politics. And I started essentially a dual track in my life, which I'm on to this day, which is really focused on conservation, which I was doing as a volunteer. And then when I formed the society, I started to become a way of life. I was getting paid to do that. And then on the other side was public policy. So I was elected in 2002 as a Coquitlam City Councillor, re-elected twice, 3 terms, and then served as a member of Parliament for 10 years. So 3 terms as well, and then just last year ran and was elected provincially as an MLA for Coquitlam-Burke Mountain.
Where's the best place to make the kinds of changes that you're thinking, that you see needed in politics?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on what your passion is, what your focus is, and what you want, how you want to affect change. I think if your focus is very much your community, then local politics is really where you should be. If you're thinking about a provincial impact, like the entire Fraser system, then provincial government, and to some extent federal government is also a really good place as well. But if you're thinking of broader issues, I mean, you can still, I think all politics is local for most of the, the existence of a political person. However, if you have other interests, certainly if you want to affect change on the national or international scale, then a member of parliament is what you want to aspire to. But all of those experiences, and I wasn't searching for politics. Politics pulled me in. But all of those experiences, and I went from local to federal, back to provincial. I was governing as a councillor, in opposition as a member of parliament, and now in government as a provincial politician. All have been tremendously helpful in understanding the system, understanding change, how change works, how change doesn't work, what agendas are out there, what controls things, what works, what doesn't work, what motivates, what doesn't motivate. It has been, I think, a fascinating ride, as far as what I've been involved with. Locally, as a city councillor, I learned so much. Like, that's where issues on the Fraser are happening, in cities. You've got rivers and creeks and streams being impacted by housing developments every day.
And that's happening right here in Coquitlam as
right,
we speak.
Right in Coquitlam, right in every municipality in the lower Fraser, and then right across the planet. But then, provincially, that's when you can look at things like forestry, mining, agriculture, ranching, some of the larger impacts that are happening outside of urban, but in other municipalities or cities, outside of those boundaries. And then, of course, when you look at the whole nation, all the river basins across the country or in the world, that's where being a member of parliament, you can really understand and learn, whether it's at the national level or the international level, United Nations, et cetera.
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up with regards to this. Because we're here in Coquitlam, like, I know that we have watershed societies, like, right, not more than a couple of miles from here, or less than a mile from where we are, is the Hoy Creek Watershed Society. That's one way people can get involved. But what can people do within your riding to help you on this subject?
Yeah, that's a great point, Brad, is getting involved with a local organization, and there's so many, thankfully, that are active, whether it's a particular tributary of the Coquitlam or the Coquitlam itself or the Fraser. I mean, there's depending on your interest, there's a number of hatchery programs or stewardship groups or education conservation organizations, the Watershed Society of BC. So there's a whole range of organizations that are doing great work. I would encourage people to get involved. I mean, once you've become self-aware and you've made that commitment, I want to make a difference. Now it's like, how do I make a difference? So, getting involved with an organization, maybe you want to get involved politically. Maybe you want to get involved with an amazing business or a school, or, there's so many avenues that you can provide your talents and your unique set of characteristics and apply that to the problem at hand. We need everyone being involved and engaged in this, this tough challenge of moving us towards a more sustainable path.
We know that you were recently inducted into the Hall of Fame. Can you tell us, what does that mean to you?
Well, it was a tremendous honor to be inducted into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. I joined a small number of people who have received that recognition, so that feels good. It's a really amazing thing to be given that recognition, and also shown that you share the stage with a small number of others who have shown that kind of leadership for this incredible river. So it's an honor that I wear proudly. I was amazed that I would get that, but it is a passion. The Fraser has become something that I am working on for the rest of my life. And so I'm getting recognized for that commitment, and it's only because of so many others that I think I'm accepting that induction into that place. And so it was thrilling. We had when we had the event, and all people came together, and there were so many that provided their comments and gave their testimonials, even for folks that couldn't be there, that said really nice things. But I was overwhelmed, and it was a really emotional time, because I don't often take time to stop and think about that, because I'm too busy focusing on trying to get the job done. So it was a night where I stopped and listened and really appreciated the kind of tributes that were pouring in.
I think there is a certain power or a certain synergy in when you get a room full of like-minded people that are all looking in the same direction. And I think it was an honor well deserved. And I'm wondering, do you see the next generation, like you are talking about sort of standing on shoulders of people that have gone before you, do you see people coming up behind you, like maybe somebody that you've mentored, or is there an interest in the next wave coming through and carrying on with your work?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things my good friend Doug Rady's commented afterwards, and said he remembers 20 years ago when we were on the banks of the river and talking about how we're going to need a movement of people from all walks of life engaging in the solution. And then he said, looking around that evening at the room and the different people that were in, from younger to older, to our elders in the room, he said, there's the movement right there. I mean, it's incredible that that evening drew that many people together. And definitely, it's there. I feel very confident that there's a younger generation that is learning and passionate, and is more aware than ever about the solutions that are needed, and are not going to take no for an answer. They want to see change, and it's good, because we are out of time. We need to see that change happen now.
So is there one sort of moment that would kind of stand out, either from your swims or your Rivershed experiences, that was sort of like an iconic moment for you, something that sort of cemented that will, that yes, I will do this for the rest of my life?
Yeah, there's really two and they're connected, that I think of often to answer that question. It was on the first day of the first swim in 1995. I had left a place called Tijan-Cache, a small community up near Mount Robson by Mount Cherry Fox. And I was swimming around a bend, and there was a shallow spawning grounds, and I could actually see the Chinook salmon swimming underneath me, because the water hadn't gotten too murky yet. And I just thought, being a city slicker, oh, these fish will get out of my way. But no, they had a bigger purpose than just my swim. They were going to spawn and continue the life cycle. And I remember my one stroke coming down and just touching. I could see, and I touched this Chinook, and it was just an incredibly powerful experience. And it just dawned on me that connection, that physical touching, is that I'm doing this swim for these animals that don't have a voice. And it was incredibly powerful. So when I, almost 500 kilometers later, landed in Prince George, I had an opportunity to share that story with a group of elders and young people and Indigenous leaders. And they said, they recognized what I was doing, why I was doing. They recognized that story. And then they presented me with a birch bark biting, a rare form of art. And they said, we acknowledge your efforts. And it was just a real awareness after having, and a really, I just really appreciated that they were acknowledging my efforts after 500 kilometers of swimming where I didn't see very many people at all, to coming into a pretty, that was the biggest, at the time, the biggest city that we'd faced. And here they are recognizing why I'm doing this. So, you know, what was that, 20 some odd 6 years later, I'm thinking that, I still think vividly of that day when that group acknowledged why I was doing it. And one of the leaders shared with me a custom, and he said, Finn, when you get in the river, you ask that river for protection. And you ask that river to protect you and protect your crew as you continue on your journey. And so that I consider an incredible gift. And so that point on, after every swim, every day I started a swim, that's what I would do, is take the water and in all four directions ask the river for protection.
And I know you have one other story that you said you had two moments, but as far as First Nations, like you've built up a relationship, and we know the importance of the salmon to First Nations, and I believe you have a special name that was given to you by First Nations, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely, and that really is the second story with I received a name. It was a couple of years later, though. It was in 1997, the Squamish Nation recognized my efforts as someone who was really a steward and you know, showing leadership at my age. And so they welcomed me into their family and gave me a name. And that doesn't happen very often. And so they, you know, that kind of responsibility I wear proudly, and I wear with a great honor. But the name Iem Yoyos means strong swimmer in the animal world, or orca. And the reason that the elders chose to give me the name orca is their feeling as if the orca are plentiful. That means that the food that they rely on, i.e. salmon, is plentiful as well. So it's my responsibility to ensure that there's enough salmon to feed the orca. So that is, I wear that responsibility. I think it's ironic through some of my work as a politician. I'm the Fisheries and Aquaculture Parliamentary Secretary. So for the provincial government, my focus is on fisheries, and that, you know, that name couldn't be more suited or suitable for the work that I'm doing now and what I've done in the past. So, you know, that moment when I got given that name in a naming ceremony in 1997 was amazing. When I touched that salmon in 1995 and then shared that story with the elders and youth and community leaders in Prince George, that, you know, those are some of the you know, the stories that I've had over the, you know, 26 years of doing this.
I'm wondering, who is it that inspires you? Or maybe it's some of the people that you met in those trips, or who inspires you right now in the world?
Yeah, I certainly, you know, I've dedicated swims. So I dedicated the induction to Curtis Culp and so many others who came before me. And I really, the reason I did that is I wanted to acknowledge so many advocates that have worked so hard and are no longer with us. So I wanted to certainly acknowledge their efforts, and we all know them in different communities. There are teachers that impacted me. I remember an elementary school teacher that was critical in my upbringing and path, a grade 7 teacher, Norm Stoffberg. He made such a difference in my life. My dad, my parents, amazing for me that, you know, how supported I felt as a young person, and that's not, you can't take that for granted. And you know, I just so appreciate having an amazing family and a stable family, and that allowed me to do the things that I've done and go on to do things. You know, I've got so many inspirational role models like John Cashore, who is the MLA and Environment Minister, and so many other things that he has done. There's so many people that have done incredible things, and I've met some of them as well, whether as a city councillor or as a member of Parliament, world leaders and advocates that have done incredible things. It's just, it's amazing to hear their stories and also to be impacted by stories in our communities. I mean, the heroes in our communities they're doing things sometimes just quietly without any recognition or acknowledgement, and they're just doing it because it's the right thing to do, and they're doing it day in, day out. And I mean, they're the unsung heroes.
And I think for people that not everybody can get out onto the river to experience it, are there opportunities, is there a path or a trail that's planned to be completed soon that is going down part of the Fraser?
Well, there's the national trail, and certainly that's tried to line up, I think, along rivers. And we had in the past have done events where we, you know, are getting people on the river, on the Blue Way, but also along the river on pathways. So certainly there's an initiative called Experience the Fraser that is really trying to connect the Lower Fraser, a pathway where you can walk or cycle along from Hope to Vancouver. So that isn't complete yet, but I would love to see that complete so that everyone can enjoy the river in some way, whether, you know, it's in a wheelchair or paddling on the river, biking, walking, you know, just really enjoying the river however way you can.
And here's some further coverage on Fin Donnelly's recent induction into the Fraser River Discovery Center's Hall of Fame.
HYLCM, Siaya, Ait Tanisqualawan, Wananu Ait Tanisqualawan, E Quans Quetzal. I'm saying to you in our language, our Hunkaminam language, that I have good thoughts in my mind and good feelings in my heart for what we're doing here tonight. My name is Jordan Point. I'm the Executive Director of the First Nations Fisheries Council of British Columbia. I'm also a member of Musqueam Council, elected first in 1996. I wanted to just make a couple of comments on the work that you're doing here tonight. I've known Fin Donnelly for many years and shared the platform with him at many events and many occasions because we share similar vision, similar goals, and a shared vision for collaboration that keeps our paths on overlapping tangents. This path that he has walked on has been a good path of a true human being, and he has shared the values of protecting the Stalo, which is our Hunkaminam word for the river. And in this case, the Fraser River we're talking about. Our people were always taught that if you look after the river and protect it, it will look after you. It will feed you, it will look after you and your children, and it will give you life and it will sustain you. Fin Donnelly has been protecting this river for a generation, and to bring attention to its strength and also its vulnerability. How we must all learn to share the responsibility to protect it so it can look after us and our children. I'm happy to congratulate him and to see him included in this Fraser River Hall of Fame. And I raise my hands and say, Haichka, CM. Thank you. Congratulations, Fin.
I want to give a huge shout out to Fin Donnelly for being inducted to the Fraser River Hall of Fame. As you all know, Fin is basically a fish. He swam the river. He has been fighting to protect the environment, to protect the watershed and the river. and he has been contributing in so many ways. He's been a city councillor, a member of parliament, now an MLA. Finn, this is well deserved. Congratulations on being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Hi everyone, I'm George Heyman, BC's Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. But more importantly, I'm a friend and colleague of Fin Donnelly's. And I'm so sorry I can't join you all tonight to celebrate his induction into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. It's such a well-deserved honor. We all know what a tireless and effective advocate Fin is, whether it was in Ottawa or whether in British Columbia. It's such a pleasure to have him as part of our government and to work with him on a watershed security strategy and fund, and to watch his important work to develop plans to protect wild salmon and coastal communities and habitat. Have a great evening, and Finn, congratulations, well deserved.
Hello, Finn. A huge congratulations to you on being inducted into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. It was such a privilege to work with you as an MP in Ottawa, and it's so great having an environmental champion like you representing us in Victoria. This honor is so deserved for your unwavering dedication to protecting and enhancing the Fraser River. You know, I can now apologize for teasing you about how it's not such a big deal swimming across the Fraser River, when we all know how much your swims down the Fraser River have done to raise public awareness. That you have a children's storybook written about your adventures says it all. Congratulations, Finn, from me and Jeanette, and hi to Linda. Hope to see you both soon.
Hi, I'm Don Davies, Member of Parliament for Vancouver Kingsway. It gives me great pleasure to celebrate the induction of my great friend Fin Donnelly on the occasion of his induction into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. You know, I think we all know that Fin Donnelly is probably the nicest man in politics, but what many people don't know is that Fin and I were Ottawa spouses for some 10 years, and Fin's legendary kindness and calmness were experienced by me firsthand. But I have to tell you, the only time I have ever seen Fin Donnelly angry is when I questioned him on the fact that on his 2 swims of the Fraser River that they were downstream. And he looked at me with his ashen face. He said, "You know, Don, I almost died several times." I never asked him again about that. But seriously, Fin is simply a national treasure. He is that rare person who combines keen intelligence with a compassionate heart and raw courage. He's also that uncommon leader. He's a hopeful idealist with energetic pragmatism, and all of which is to say that there is no better champion, no greater friend, no more brave soul in protecting the Fraser River and all rivers and waterways in this country than Fin Donnelly. No more deserving person to be inducted into this Hall of Fame. Fin, you deserve it. Thank you on behalf of the people of Vancouver Kingsway for everything you do and will do in the future.
Congratulations, Fin Donnelly, on the singular honor of being in the Hall of Fame. You have done so much to protect the Fraser River and the Fraser River watershed. You've done it as a city councillor, you've done it as a member of parliament, you've done it as an MLA, but most importantly, throughout your life, you've done it as an activist. On behalf of all the inhabitants of the Fraser River watershed, and indeed everyone on this planet, thank you for your valuable work in preserving what is our precious resource in British Columbia. Thank you, Fin Donnelly, and congratulations.
Hi everyone, I'm Ann Kang, MLA for Burnaby-Deer Lake and Minister of Advanced Education and Skills Training, and a good friend of Fin Donnelly. I am so thrilled today because we are celebrating Fin Donnelly becoming a part of the Fraser River Hall of Fame. This is so incredibly exciting, and I can't think of anyone more deserving of such a high honor. I think we are all aware of Fin's legendary Fraser River swim in 1995. But what everyone may not see in Finn's day-to-day commitment to sustainability and river protection, from his work as Member of Parliament, then MLA and Parliamentary Secretary for Fisheries and Agriculture, I am in awe of Finn's lifelong and tireless fight to protect our waters, and I am so grateful for his contributions. Congratulations, Finn, and thank you for inspiring all of us every day.
Hi, this is Bob Deeth. I'm the MLA for Maple Ridge Mission. It's no surprise to me when I heard that Finn was being inducted into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. Long before we met, I had heard of Finn and his dedication not only to the Fraser River, but to the health and well-being of our waterways, oceans, and all the ecological diversity that we count on and that we live in. Also, anytime an issue that's come up on West Coast waters, you were sure to hear from Finn on the case right away, advocating and fighting for a solution. And over the last year, it's been really a pleasure to work with Finn, and even better to see him in action with his work with as a Parliamentary Secretary for Fisheries and Aquaculture. And so from founding the Watershed Society of British Columbia to serving as MP for Port Moody Coquitlam and the critic for Fisheries and Oceans, to what you're doing now today in British Columbia, Finn, we all owe you a debt of gratitude for the work that you're doing, and of course highlighting the importance of the Fraser River in our province. You brought awareness to the issues facing our waterways and aquaculture in British Columbia and across Canada, and of course around the world. So thank you so much, Finn, for everything you've done. Congratulations, well deserved. All the best, my friend.
I'm Mark Angelo, Chair and founder of both BC and World Rivers Day, and I want to congratulate Finn on his induction into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. That is so deserved. I have known Finn for a long, long time, and I remember long ago when Finn first told me of his plans to swim the entire length of the Fraser River. I was so impressed in that I knew the challenges of doing that. I had paddled the full length of the river. I knew the challenges of paddling it, let alone swimming it. So I followed his swim very, very closely, and I thought it was such an heroic and exciting undertaking. I also had the great privilege of welcoming Finn home at the end of his swim when he arrived in Vancouver on the afternoon of BC Rivers Day, and that was literally a highlight of the day. Finn then went on the following year to establish the Watershed Society of BC, a great group that does incredible work in our province. He then entered the political arena, first with the city of Coquitlam as a councillor, then as an MP, then as an MLA and parliamentary secretary. And I have so enjoyed working with him in all of those roles. And throughout his political career, Finn has always stayed true to his principles and true to his great passion for the Fraser River. So congratulations, Finn. You're a good friend and a person I so greatly respect. This is an honor that is so richly deserved. Thanks again to the Fraser River Discovery Center for having this event, and I hope you have a great evening.
Hi Finn, it's Rick Hansen here. I'd like to join everyone in congratulating you on this year's induction into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. It's such a just recognition of your decades of service in drawing attention to this important river and ensuring that it's a healthy and sustainable ecosystem for decades to come. Right from your swim down the Fraser 26 years ago, to your years of advocacy as a member of Parliament or an MLA, and now as Parliamentary Secretary in charge of wild salmon and healthy fisheries, we are inspired by your leadership. This is a great recognition of what you've done to date, but what inspires me the most is that you keep setting the bar higher. And as the chair of the Fraser River Sturgeon Conservation Society, and as someone who's committed his life to ensuring that healthy salmon populations are here for many generations to come, I'm so blown away by your role, your leadership, and the way you bring people together. I know that sturgeon are counting on you, so are salmon, and so are all of us. We'll work together harder. We need you to keep leading. So don't stop, my friend. We're with you.
Hey Finn, Steve Whitney here, checking in from Seattle. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but please know that your friends at the Bullet Foundation send their sincere congratulations on your induction into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. Now, I'm not exactly sure what Fraser River Hall of Fame status requires, but I do know that if anyone deserves the honor, you do. You know, I look back over the Foundation's records and I can see that we've made dozens of grants to many different organizations for all manner of work to defend, restore, and conserve the Fraser River and its associated ecosystems. And I can tell you that that commitment would not have been so robust but for the time you took some 20 years ago to educate me about the river, about its people, and about its significance to the province. So I thank you for that knowledge and for your willingness to share it with me. And I congratulate you on this honor. I value our friendship, and I look forward to catching up with you in person sometime very soon. Take care. Cheers.
My name is Alan Domas. I've known Fin Donnelly for many, many years. Early on, he was a councillor in Coquitlam, and I was working for the Fraser River Port Authority. When he came to council, I originally was very concerned that an environmentalist had taken over the seat on council and the focus of the city would change. However, as I came to know Fin and understand that he embraced sustainability and not simply the environment, I came to have a relationship that has lasted for a very long time and I believe built on mutual respect. Fin, welcome to the Hall of Fame. It's likely long overdue. Congratulations and welcome.
Congratulations on your nomination, Fin. You're now joining an elite group of men, women, and a community that have led the way in British Columbia and the world in this grand conversation on the plight of our streams, our rivers, our watersheds, and our salmon populations. Your nomination is well deserved, and I'm personally very proud for you and your family in this recognition. Again, well deserved. I've always realized the fastest way towards solution is dialogue and a great Rolodex, and you certainly have both. I appreciate your ability to champion the big picture, not get lost in the details, and for a politician, you have amazing listening skills. I think mostly I admire your strategic mind and your professional presentation. It serves you well. Again, congratulations. Now that you're in this club, Fin, I'm wondering if you might champion the idea of the Nickason River becoming the new headwaters of the Fraser. After all, it was a simple slip of the pen of a cartographer that chose the eastern version, and it might help us with our funding opportunities up here.
Fin, from the Izumi Estrada family, we'd like to congratulate you on a well-deserved induction into the Fraser River Hall of Fame. I thought it was important to reach out to you and let you know how much you've meant personally to me over the years, your passion, dedication, and most of all, your resilience to the environment and speaking up for wild fish is nothing short of inspirational. So thank you for everything you've done. I'm sorry.